Welcome to another episode of Inspire Careers Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I interview career professionals from all across the professional management space to help bring you up-to-date information and help you advance in your careers. And I'm really excited today to have as my special guest, Melanie Denny. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, how are you, Kathy?
I'm well. It's good to see you again.
Yes. It definitely is. It's been a long time.
I know. Too long that we didn't want to talk about how long, but too long. But listen, I'm thrilled to have you here today because a lot of people are setting their goals for what they want to do with themselves over the next year. So you are a perfect guest to talk about branding. But before we get into it, let me introduce you to our audience. So Melanie is a personal branding consultant, self-marketing expert, certified LinkedIn strategist, and founder of the Empowered Presence Framework, designed for brilliant women of color to gain visibility, authority, and thought leadership without sacrificing their authenticity. Melanie has been featured in Forbes, HuffPost, Yahoo News, Fast Company, NBC News, and countless podcasts, including this one, sharing self-marketing tips and tricks. She's been invited to speak to national organizations and nonprofits across the world on career topics including LinkedIn, personal branding, networking, and career empowerment. So I'm truly honored to have you here today, Mel. Thanks again.
Awesome. I'm happy to be here and I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's start the conversation up by allowing you to introduce yourself a little bit. You've got a really fascinating career story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey, and then we will get into the meat of our talk.
Absolutely. So I started off writing resumes back in 2009. And over time, I really got burnt out from the writing of the resumes. But the thing was that what kept me going was not just the resume writing process itself, but it was the client's reaction and the client's kind of eye-opening when they see what they have done in plain words and they recognize the value that they're able to bring to organizations. Because a lot of my clients were head down, do my work, go home. And it's like, well, let's back that up. And so that part of it and really helping them to recognize what made them unique and what made them special was a gift. It was a gift that I recognize not every resume writer was able to do. And it helped me to stand out. And it was really the birth of my passion for personal branding. Because during that time, I also took my personal brand very seriously and I dove headfirst into the resume writing world. I wanted to be the best of the best. And so I really immersed myself into the industry. You know, I got on boards, I got awards, right? Got quotes. I was really looking to build my personal brand. In 2020, I ended up starting a resume writing membership for resume writers to help them also build their brands and to help them to really write at a higher level. That still wasn't enough. I was still feeling something was missing. And so I had to do some soul searching. On all, and it was hard because I had really become a resume expert. And outside of that, I kind of lost who else I was. And so it was really a struggle for me to figure out what was next for Mel. And then I stumbled across an opportunity to take a certification. So I decided to take a personal branding a digital branding certification. And that really helped me to figure out, you know what, I really love this branding stuff. I just don't want to write a resume.
Yeah.
And so, and digging deeper into that, I thought, well, what impact do I really want to make here? Because I could take this skill set and I could now help people to brand themselves, but I knew I didn't want it just to be for a job. So what else could they brand themselves for? And I thought about what I have done for myself in branding myself for opportunities to speak, to be on podcasts, all these opportunities. And I thought I could help my clients do the same. And so I really decided to take personal branding to the next level and really help people to position themselves for opportunities beyond the 9 to 5.
Melanie, can we just talk a little bit? Because I think as people hear the talk about branding, a lot of people don't really understand it. I think people are still a little resistant to it, believing that brands are toothpaste, brands are cereal, brands are those things. You know, I'm me. I don't really know how that applies to me. Can you talk a little bit? You talk about personal branding, what personal branding is and what it is not. just to kind of level set for the conversation?
Yes, absolutely. So defining what personal branding is, I think is definitely important. So I'm happy you're asking this question. I think a lot of people disassociate themselves from being able to have a personal brand because they associate it with, people with money and popularity or celebrity status.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you too can build your personal brand. But I think a lot of people feel like I've heard a lot of people say, and I used to say this myself, but everyone has a personal brand. Necessarily, no. Everyone has a reputation, right? Which is a part of building your personal brand. But the personal branding aspect is an intentional activity that you're doing to making sure that you are positioning yourself, that you're able to shape perceptions about who you are and really build authority with the intention behind getting some benefit. Right. So it could be those opportunities to speak or a job or whatever it is. And so building your personal brand is not just about, having 1 million followers. You could be popular, but no one really knows what you're talking about. Maybe, I don't know. But personal branding and the way in which I approach it is really about building your expertise, building a platform, building community, and being able to influence and impact people with some message.
Well, let me ask you this. I think a natural question, because I posed it to myself and I can hear my clients talking in my ear and I can hear people all over LinkedIn. What do I have to say? Who cares what I have to say? Does it matter who's listening? How do you respond to people that say, I care what Oprah says? And I saw you had a post the other day on LinkedIn about you just don't wake up one day and become Oprah, right? It takes time. You have to build that. But people think only people with that platform have. So what do you say to people that are just starting out and saying, all right, I hear what you're saying to me, but I don't know what to talk about. I don't think anybody cares. And the last time I posted on LinkedIn, it was radio silence. How do you get people engaged with that to buy in at all?
Oh my goodness. Such a great question. So I hear that too, right? I don't have anything to say. No one's going to listen to me, little old me. Here's the thing that I feel like people don't understand. Your story is powerful. When people say, I don't know what to post, I go straight to tell your story. Because at the end of the day, you could post tips and strategies, that's fine. But all that stuff is pretty Googleable at this point, right? People can Google the how to, right? How to, etc. But it's your connection with your work that really makes people buy into you and follow what you have to say. When you start telling your story, then people see, wow, she gets it. She gets me because I have a similar story. And look at her. She's overcome. Maybe I too can overcome. And so the storytelling becomes a point of reference for people to recognize, okay, I can also keep going because someone else understands and I'm not in this by myself. And maybe even this person can help me get to where they are. So I think the key becomes really connecting your story to your work in a way that is compelling and interesting to the people you're looking to reach, right? Posting tips and tricks, again, a lot of people tend to go there first. And there's nothing wrong with it. I post tips and tricks too. But again, how has this worked for you? How do you connect those tips? Did you use this tip and what happened when you did it? Right. And really showing that it's real and it's not a theory that is connected to real results because you could see this real person talking about their experience is so, so powerful.
Yeah. You make a great point. Everything is Googleable. And now, of course, with AI, it takes it to a whole other level. So everybody can be an expert in all these things. But when it comes down to it, what I hear you saying is relationships. And not even necessarily taking it to that next level, but connecting. So I can hear myself in your story like you spoke about. But Melanie, as you say that, even part of me who tries to do it and does not do it perfectly, tries to do it, it makes me feel vulnerable. So what do you say when you say to people? Because isn't that part of it? And again, you say, could tell my story, but it makes me feel vulnerable. And then I feel like people will judge me. So how do you kind of get people to become more comfortable? You know what I'm saying? You must have heard it 100 times, right?
Yes, 100 times. The thing about it is And when me and my clients work together, this is the stuff we have to dig into first, right? People think, oh, personal branding consultant, great. She's going to help me put out content and nice, cute colors. Yeah, that stuff's going to come later. First, we have to figure out who you are. It's an identity thing, right? And so that's where the conflict comes into place, because a lot of people have morphed who they are for the sake of a job or some situation that they were in because they felt like that's what they needed to be. That's a little bit of a different conversation. But the fear comes from feeling like you're not perfect, feeling like you have faults, feeling like you're not good enough, feeling like no one's gonna relate to this because it's not this pretty picture. But what I challenge my clients to recognize is that everyone has those same struggles. And when you have the courage to share yours, it gives other people the courage to share theirs. It inspires people. And so you have to really dig deeper into your why. I'm not saying share stories just to share them. Hey, you got a story, tell it. Why are you sharing this? How is it going to make your audience feel? Is it going to empower them to make a change in their own lives? That's really what we have to get to first. And when that why is big enough and the desire to make that impact is bigger than your fear of judgment, that's where the magic happens. It's time to go. Let's make this impact. And I feel like that's the part so many people miss. They're like, oh, I want a brand. Okay, great. Why? Who are you looking to impact? And then what is your story? And another thing too about sharing stories, I don't want you to share things that you're still not over, right? If you think about this situation and you're still ready to cry about it, or there's some trauma that you still haven't really necessarily dealt with enough, don't share that. You're not ready.
Yeah.
Because the internet is a beast and they will eat you alive if you are not ready. So if there are stories that you feel like you want to share and you feel like you're not quite all the way there, then maybe it's not time yet for you to share those deeper stories. Or maybe you can mention something and keep it surface. And then, as you get more comfortable and more people say, raise their hands to say they can relate, then maybe you could start putting a little bit more detail into it.
You raise a great point, though, about how authentic is authentic and how, where are the boundaries for that? And I've seen you talk about it online before, and I'd ask you to share a little bit of it here, because I think when people hear you saying that, they're like, okay, yeah, there are some things I don't think I'm ready to talk about, but I don't know what is okay to talk about my story, even if I'm comfortable with it. Where's that line, Mel? Where should people, as they're getting their stories together, is posting bikini pictures of you? Is that authentic? Is it too authentic? Does it depend on your message? How can people kind of test that to say, what should I be sharing? Or is nothing off limits?
Yeah, well, I think there's a fine line. Like you said, it's a little bit of a challenge because you don't want to overshare, which I think I said something in the past about, being authentic is not the same as oversharing.
Yeah.
Right. Because people feel like they know me. Right. Because I share some stories here and there. I've shared about, motherhood and having the twins and having postpartum and all these things. So they feel connected to me, mothers and stuff. But at the end of the day, you really don't know me. Right. You really don't know me. And so it's really about making sure that the stories you're picking are going to be the ones that are going to resonate most with the people you're looking to reach. I can't stress that enough. And how do you know? You have to have these conversations with them. You have to start talking to the people you want to reach, right? This could look like surveys, coffee chats, polls, whatever, but figuring out, okay, how do you feel about this? What challenges have you had here? And then saying, okay, what have I experienced that's similar to this that I can share to encourage this person or that person or my audience, right? The other thing too is you have to also consider there is a certain level of filter you do kind of want to have, right? Like you said, bikini pics, it depends on the context. If we're on LinkedIn,
you're a health coach, run about, right?
Exactly. And you're talking about body shaming and whatever, it could work, right? So it really depends on the context. And it goes back to, like I said before, why are you sharing this? Mm-hmm. And so The other part in terms of figuring out, okay, is this authentic? Is how you feel about it. A lot of times I'm like ready to post something and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I think I'm filtering this a little too much, or I think I'm trying to be buttoned up too much. That's not how I really talk. And going back and just saying, okay, let's switch out some of these words because I'm just trying to put on for LinkedIn and this is not really truly who I am. And I think a lot of times we don't check into that enough to we can tell, we know when things are a little uneasy or we're feeling like, I kind of probably, that wasn't in alignment with my spirit, right? And I think checking in is something that we don't do enough to making sure that we're not sacrificing pieces of ourselves for the sake of whatever we're looking, followers or likes or whatnot.
And we do it all the day. We do it all day.
Yeah.
We do it everywhere. We do it all day long. We do it at coffee with friends. We do it at work. We do it with our families in some regard. Probably
Yes.
too, right? Absolutely. But can I just make a point here too, is that as we're talking about who's your audience, who do you want to reach? What do you want to influence? You do not have to be a business owner. You do not have to be a mega millionaire. You don't have to be somebody with 100,000 followers. This is for everybody, right?
Absolutely. Everybody with a goal or mission.
And even to share, to serve. That is all the mission you need, right? Is to be able to have somebody feel that they can connect with you. Maybe there's other goals of finding a job, getting your book out there, getting a speaking engagement, whatever it is. But even just nothing more, and I mean that with the most respect, nothing more than just hoping somebody out there feels that they're not alone.
They're not alone. Exactly.
Right. And they can feel it.
Powerful.
Let's talk about women in particular. Okay. Because I think the personal branding piece is particularly, the word I'm using, I don't want to say sensitive or triggering, but I think women have a harder time. I know when I talk to my women clients, they have a harder time owning just how wonderful they are. Sometimes, and it goes from lack of confidence sometimes to full-blown imposter syndrome, right? So let's talk a little bit because I want to get into your fabulous framework, but I want to kind of start the foundation talking about women in general and some of the biggest challenge you see when you're talking to women and you're getting responses from women about personal branding and some of what their fears are and what their challenges are with really leading in.
Yeah, it's frustrating for me when I hear women, right, talk about themselves in that way, or imposter, I'm not sure of this, da, da, da. The thing is, we have been socialized to be modest. And when we're bold, now we're the bitch. And so it's challenging for us because we don't want to be looked at as the B word. We want to be looked at as someone who is capable and qualified and a leader. And so when it comes to personal branding for women, I think it's even more important for us to shape our narratives and show up powerfully, because if we are second guessing ourselves, the people in the room are definitely not going to be confident in us. And it's a challenge because it has been years of growing up as little girls and moving up into life that we have been conditioned to just be modest and don't be too loud and don't be too mean and don't be too brash. And, you girls, shouldn't be cursing, and make sure you sit properly and all these things to keep
Melanie, did you see the Barbie movie? Because you sound like America Ferrera. Did you see it?
I did not see it. I had no desire to see it.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, though. The America Ferrera, her soliloquy in there is inspiring, and you sound very much like that about the difficulties, the ambiguity, the double standards that women are held to all the time.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I feel like, yes, we can have trainings and all these things for everyone else. But at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer is you have to teach people how to treat you, period. And that means standing up for yourself, advocating for yourself, empowering yourself, surrounding yourself with people who will support you and pour into you so that you don't go into these meetings second guessing yourself, because the moment they smell fear, it's a wrap. You have to show up as if you belong, because you do. And again, going back to the personal branding piece, this is all stuff that we do in my program. We have to figure out some of these things that we have believed or bought into and replace them with new truths.
New truths. I like that. That's a perfect lead in because I really want to talk about empowered presence. Tell me how it was born. Tell me a little bit about what it does for you, and certainly what it's doing for your clients and the impact it's making in their world. Share with us.
Yes, empowered presence. That I get really excited about this because I feel like I enjoy resume writing and things, and I was helping people find jobs. But I feel like this is so much more fulfilling for me because honestly, I don't really believe in corporate ladder, right? And so here I am slanging resumes. It was always a little bit of a misalignment for me. So when I was able to finally let go of the resume writing piece and move into the personal branding space, I could see way more possibility for the people that I worked with. And I started this fall of 2022, and I had my first pilot cohort, and I learned so much from that experience because when I did the training and the certification, I got, oh, okay, this is great. We got to have this, cover that, cover this. And when I finally started coaching people, I realized how much deeper this work actually was. And like I said, I also kind of went into it like, okay, you're going to tell your stories, you're going to, figure out your content. But it became, who are you? It was an identity thing. And the people that I've worked with, the women that I've worked with have had so many breakthroughs. A lot of them say, oh my goodness, this was like a therapy session. And I'm like, I could send you a separate bill for therapy. That's not, but we had to dig so much deeper because of some of the issues that they were having. I had a client she was dimming her own light for her own husband. She didn't even recognize that, right? Until going through a power presence where she thought she was coming here to build her business.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's that deep work that we have to do to really come into who we are as women of color in particular, because we have a whole nother set of layers that we have to peel back. And so for me, the Empowered Presence program really, really, really gave me a sense of purpose because I see myself in each one of my clients, right? I'm still working on stuff myself. I haven't arrived, right? But the things that they battle, I totally understand, and we can relate to each other, and I can walk them through a new way of looking at it. And a lot of them have broken through so many barriers, right? I had one who was so stuck on perfect. She had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect, and it was hindering her from doing anything. And I told her, your new truth needs to be done is better than perfect. Because you are coming with a certain level of excellence, your done or 70% still better than most people 100%. That's the reality of the women that I work with, because we're under so much pressure to make sure we're perfect that our standard is so high that even if we don't give it 100%, it's still phenomenal work. And I think allowing her to recognize that, she was able to get things done and she still got the praise. Oh, this is wonderful. This is great, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, oh, okay, I can do things where every single T may not be dotted and it's still good enough. And so tons of results in terms of, engagement on LinkedIn, speaking engagements, and it's all based around how they started showing up, both offline and online, right? On LinkedIn, on Facebook. I don't only focus on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my jam, but also Facebook, and repurposing that stuff for Instagram and building your brand like in a cohesive brand where you're online and you're offline. So they're going to networking events and they're going to conferences. I have one young lady who went to a conference and people at the conference were like, something's different about you. And she's like, yeah, because I know who I am now. And people could tell that she's been through that transformation, and it just seeps off of her. People just, it's exuded. And so that's the stuff that I live for.
Does it give people permission? Does it give these brilliant women of color, which is your core audience with this, does it give them a feeling of permission, if you will, to be able to verbalize these things? I know, as a white woman who worked in corporate America for many years, looking back on it now, things that happened, stuff I put up with, I can tell you stories all day. We talked a minute ago about layers. There's more layers with women of color. They have more challenge, and they may not have the resources or the right coaching in the workplace to be able to have that safe space, which is exactly what you're providing, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And that reminds me of another client. She was telling me, she's high up. She's director level, and her VP offered her promotion, or someone was leaving. And he said, I want you to fill that spot. And she panicked. She's like, I can't fill that spot. And her boss is like, I wish you could see yourself the way that we see you. And she just, just could not. And she said, she feels like she has to put on a caricature when she goes to work. And she's really tired. She's tired of it.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting trying to pretend that you're somebody that you're not for the reason of trying to please other people. It's exhausting, isn't it?
It's very exhausting. And it's not sustainable long term.
So, Melanie, let me ask you this. It's people work through your framework and they come, and I heard you tell them about tell your story, and it may not be the story they came to tell, right? Like your example of your woman had these issues with her husband, because really our lives, professional lives, don't happen in a vacuum, right? They impact everything, tentacles everywhere, right? So as they work through your framework, what is the one thing that you would say, because I know it's the deep work that's the important work, but what is where do you find most of your clients clicking? Like, where is that transformation? When is that moment, like you're like, wait for it. I know it's going to happen. And then it goes, yeah, and you're like, yep, I knew it. Like, what is that like for you, and where approximately in your program does that happen?
It's different for everyone. It usually happens towards the beginning though, right? Because the first thing is the power of vision. And it's like, what do you want? What does this look like? What does it look like for you? What does it look like for the world? What is your personal mission? Like, we go through that stuff. And sometimes people are like, wow, like, yeah, no, this is bigger than me. And this is very important. This is why I'm doing this. And they have a newfound clarity around it. And that serves as their roadmap to how they approach everything else. Right. So sometimes it happens there. Other times it's the power of story, where, okay, because I have prompts, right, to help them pull these things out. And sometimes the prompts are like, oh yeah, that one time, but I don't know, I'm not going to share that. It's like, well, why not? And then digging into that, sometimes they're like, oh, wow. Right. So it's just different for a lot of different people. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it just depends on what they have experienced and how they have been moving through the world in terms of when that happens. So,
yeah, because everybody's experience, everybody's journey, right, is different. And I think the personal branding is truly a journey as you become more comfortable in your own skin, right? And you do that at your own time and depending on the type of support that you have.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about your podcast too? I was listening to the episode the other day with you and Brenda Cunningham, who is the president of the National Resume Writers Association. And I just want to share a little bit about your podcast because, for people that may be interested in the program or not really sure, about you yet, I'd like them to be able to understand kind of the messaging in your podcast to be able to get a sense of what they learned from that.
Yeah. So the podcast is the same name, Empowered Presence. And it's pretty much, some are solo episodes with just me kind of talking. And then, but a lot of them are of past clients or other just brilliant women of color who are, branding themselves and have a message for folks looking to brand themselves. And so really it's all about their stories, a lot of storytelling going on, right? Because again, I think that's one of the most powerful ways to inspire. And a lot of the guests are people that have overcome something to get to where they are. And we're really focusing on telling the journey of, okay, where were you? What had to happen? How did you shift your thinking? And then how, where are you now? And that type of thing. There's also some, most of the solo episodes, there's more of, 5 ways to do this or, giving ideas and things like that. But the podcast is really more about understanding that personal branding is not just a simple thing. There's multiple facets to it. And like you said in the beginning, it's for pretty much anyone, right? And so really making it a relatable thing by bringing guests who are relatable people, then maybe the audience can recognize, wow, I had a similar background or I had a similar challenge and look at where she's at. Well, look at what she's doing. And you know what? I could definitely do something too. Let me get up and take some action. So
that's exciting. That's good stuff. And you are everywhere. Can I just say, I did want to share this with everybody because I had mentioned this to you before. I've been following you on LinkedIn. We've been communicating. We've met in person in the past, but you took a little bit of a break from social media. And that's kind of how we got to start talking again when you came back after the Christmas holiday. You were more refreshed. And can you talk just a little bit about that? Because I think people get so overwhelmed with being on, feeling they have to post, not knowing what to do, feeling like they have so many obligations and now LinkedIn's one more or whatever. But you, the personal branding expert, stepped away and took time. Talk a little bit about what that meant to you and why that can be so powerful to people.
Yes, I love this question. Man, so I started Empower Presence, the whole movement, the course, the program, all of that in December of 2022. So from January 2023 all the way through September, I was going hard to pump out content this when I started the podcast in the summer, June. And I was just talking, pumping, emailing my list, doing all the things, right? And honestly, if I'm being honest, the results were not where I needed them to be. Mm-hmm. So for me, I felt like I was spinning my wheels, preaching and preaching and not getting enough traction. And so I said, you know what? I'm just because it was stressing me out. I was getting stressed because I felt like I was doing so much, busy, and I was overwhelmed with all this stuff, trying to build this new brand. And I'm impatient. Like nothing's happening. The things I want to happen are not happening. And so I just decided, you know what? I'm going to stop because after a while, I started with the comparisons. Oh, this person's doing that. And then watching their LinkedIn blow up and seeing their program and da-da-da. And I'm like, why is this not happening for me? All right. And so then it started playing on my mental. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what, Mel? Shut it down. So I just decided to step back and I stopped posting. I stopped doing the podcast. And I just kind of got back to my regular in the real world life, which I wasn't. I was always in front of the screen. And I just was like, whatever, I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to take a break. Had no idea when I was going to come back. I just knew I couldn't keep going like that. Yeah. So funny enough, by November, I got like 4 things in my inbox about speaking. Right. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was, oh yeah, because we found you on here and we saw your podcast episode. We saw your YouTube. We saw your post. We saw this, we saw that. So it's like, oh, so all that work, all that work I thought was in vain was not? Okay, great. So I guess that was like a sign I needed to recognize, like, be patient with yourself and know that you do the work, you're planting the seeds, and the tree may not bloom as fast as you think it will, but it is blooming under the dirt. It is blooming under the dirt. So keep going. And I told my Empower Presence students that story. And they were like, thank you for that message, because some of them were feeling similar feelings of, nothing's right. Keep going. People are watching. People see you. And when I came back in January, things are moving very fast now. I have a lot going on. I'm speaking all over the place, and I've got workshops, and I've got podcasts, and all the things are happening. But if I didn't take that break, who knows where I would have been, because I was not mentally there. My energy was off. It was just.
Let's talk to you. You've got a young family.
I do.
As women that we're talking about too.
Can you see the picture in the back?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, you've got a young family. So, you're good to nobody if you're stressed all the time and you want to keep up with them. They keep you busy too. So I think that's an important message for people to say, yes, it's about our mental health and our physical health, but we have other people that depend on us that are a huge part of our lives that we need to make that space for sometimes.
Yeah. And I discovered some things that I like to do. I like to color.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had shared a Care Bear picture that I colored while I was away. And it was so just soothing and relaxing. And there was no pressure around, okay, is someone going to like this status? Is someone going to inbox me? Can I get a client? Like that. You cannot operate like that 24/7. And that's what I was doing for most of 2023, operating, looking for the opportunity to hit. That's a lot. And so just stepping back and being able to chill with the family and do things I like to do, and I color with the kids and stuff now, like it's a thing. I would have probably never discovered that if I was still going, and never took a minute for myself.
Well, I think that the break message, because you come back energized, you come back fresh. People are excited to see you. Sometimes the absence makes the heart grow fonder too. We've all heard that. But seriously, right? But what I hear you doing is giving all of us permission to say, take it when you need it. Maybe it's the holidays. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's take every Friday off and, don't take big breaks, whatever works for anybody, right? But take care of you first. But people are watching. And I think that's the important thing that people need to hear over and over again. You're sharing your message because you want to serve, you want to touch someone. Just because you don't get that immediate response doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I had a coach once, what did he say? Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Is that right? I think that's right.
I heard it different. It was
backwards?
Lack of evidence is not evidence of lack. That's how I've heard that before.
Same idea. Absolutely. Yeah. The point is that people are watching. They're listening to you. They're waiting, and you weren't even around, and people were bing, 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 I want more of you. So it's important. So as we talk about the branding piece and we talk about telling your story, folks, you don't have to be on 24/7. Take care of you. And this is a great opportunity as we are starting into this new year for people to build that in as well, because nobody's brand needs to be tired, cranky, and exhausted. Especially us women and mothers. Nobody needs that. Nobody needs that. But listen, I think that's a great way for us to tie up our podcast episode today. Melanie, is there anything else you'd like to kind of share with folks before we sign off today?
I guess I want to just say one last piece around the authenticity thing. At the end of the day, authenticity is going to build trust. Authenticity is going to deepen that connection. And authenticity is going to attract your people, right? And without that authentic feel, your credibility is in question. And so I want people to prioritize showing up in the full essence of who they are as much as possible. So that's all I wanted to say.
And that's beautiful. That's where we will leave it today. Thank you, Melanie Denny from Empowered Presence. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast. Your message resonates with a broad audience of people in terms of personal branding. And I really hope that the brilliant women of color have learned about Empowered Presence and you've excited them to learn more as well. Thank you for sharing yourself with us today.
I am so appreciative of you sharing your platform with me and inviting me on to spread my message to your listeners. So thank you.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, everybody, listen, when you're listening to Melanie's episode here, feel free to drop any comments. Reach out to her. We'll continue posting her social media stuff. Reach out to her. Follow her on LinkedIn. She is fabulous and you'll get all kinds of great information. Go to the Inspire Careers YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe to us. And every time we drop great new episodes, you'll be notified of those. So thank you again, Melanie, for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until we meet again, live inspired.